What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another Sunday Trialogue. I got my two co-hosts with me. I got Ethan Indigo and Ricardo Calvario. And guys, go ahead and introduce yourselves. Tell them where they can find you.
Well, I suppose I'll go first. Peace on earth. Great to be here with you guys. Always honored to discuss things with you. Ethan Indigo Smith, easy to find on the usual social media suspects. I got a couple books on Amazon, and I even got a little YouTube thing where I don't do that much. But yeah, honored to be here with you guys.
Thank you. Ricardo, tell them where they can find you.
Hello, good morning. Good morning, Headless. Good morning, Ethan. So you can find me at X at the tag that is on the screen at Ricardo Calvario 1. You can find my books on Amazon too, The Resonant Earth and Stardust. I would recommend a podcast called Universe Unveiled. Go and check it out on X and YouTube. And it's a privilege being here once more. Thank you.
Well, thank you for coming. It's been a while. So there's been a lot of changes going on all around the world that we've completely missed.
Yes.
We've got a lot of catching up to do. And I think, I don't know, with the revelations of the culmination of this whole Charlie Kirk shooting last night, the big revelation was that he was actually a Superman. You guys didn't know this, but Charlie Kirk had super bone density, right? It stopped a 30-06 bullet, right? Inside of his body. He was the ultimate bullet catcher, and we just never knew it. Like, that was his superpower. And, the size of the bullet, there's no way that it could actually, stop it. But they said because of his super bone mass, it was a miracle. He caught that bullet. Couldn't hurt anybody else.
So that's what the official forensic ballistic investigation has revealed, that the bullet did not exit.
This is the official source from TPUSA. After talking to the doctor who did the autopsy, he said, well, the guy at the autopsy place told me that he had super bone density and he could catch a 30-06 bullet traveling 2,000 feet per second.
Well, I think first of all, when we listen to all of the variety of news that are about the topic, all the variety of posts of people posting videos and angles and ideas, if I was the government and I was analyzing a situation as dire as this one, with the implications as this could have, I would never tell anyone what I'm really looking into and what I'm finding.
Doesn't matter what you know. Just don't let them know what you know. That's it.
Because it would impede the investigation itself. Because while people is all pointing into one direction or giving opinions, they are listening. Okay, let's see what we can pick up. But I'm not going to tell you what I'm investigating, because that's why courts work sometimes at closed doors, because you just can't divulge what's going on. Otherwise, you can't reach the truth.
Well, think about this for a minute. So if you know and nobody else does, you have blackmail for life. And we know this government runs off of blackmail. Maybe they're being blackmailed into not telling the truth. But as long as you've got the blackmail in the picture, you can never know what's real and what's not. As long as you've got blackmail operations that are being protected, you know that people are under control of powerful entities. That's what blackmail's for. And if you don't go after the blackmailers, your society is being run for you, and you can't know the truth ever about anything.
Sure. And in this case, I think it's so complicated that it not even by the usual question is who benefits, right? The problem is the answer to that question in this case is so complex that you don't know what side to turn. It is a tragedy. Yes, it was wrong, very wrong.
Would you call it Byzantine?
What?
Would you call it Byzantine?
Byzantine.
That's where the term comes from. For this very situation, Byzantium had a horrible problem with their deep state bureaucracy, just like we do today. And it's right there. We've got this Byzantine system that nobody can, figure out their way around. and only the insiders know the rules, right? Everybody else is sort of kept in the dark. That sort of makes up the Eastern Roman Empire.
I wouldn't say that not even the insiders, because as I say many times, the lie is different, or the truth is different at every level. So I doubt that there are many people knowing what happened, if they figured it out what happened. And
I think it's great that you ask who benefits quo bono, because if we only ask that, I think maybe that doesn't lead to enough, right? In this case, but because it would seem apparent that quo bono, it would be Trump.
In a lot of ways,
Trump owns his book publishing company. Trump gets his whole supporter spectrum elevated and hyped up and supportive and more anti-opposition than they were before. But I'm just saying there are other. Please, Ricardo, add on.
I understand exactly what you're saying, right? But for instance, in a towers situation, it was easy to see beyond the veil and start seeing the points that didn't add up and didn't make sense, and perhaps who benefits. It's not someone abroad, but someone inside, but not even someone inside, but someone higher echelons that want to control the whole earth. Right?
It took 2 decades for mass consciousness about 9/11 to really hit. We're in that era right now. Everybody knows that 9/11 was an inside job, pretty much. So 2 decades.
I mean, would you say that your peers ever believed the presented story of 9/11? Because I never really knew any. I suppose a lot of my family had, but my age group, I guess, not too many. I suppose that's not true. Maybe.
As soon as I started looking into it, it stopped making sense immediately. Right? The problem is, if you only see the news on TV and newspapers, it's hard for you to get out of that bubble of control that is directing.
If you simply don't ask.
Yeah. It's an illusion act. What is an illusionist? An illusionist is someone that diverts your attention to where things are not happening. Because where things are happening, he's concealing, because he's calling your attention to this side while things are happening on that side.
What are the principles of investigation, right? So you've got to have evidence. It could be circumstantial evidence, right? But that circumstantial evidence needs to be put into a timeline that makes sense, that has logical connections to each one of these events or each one of these pieces of circumstantial evidence. And then you present that as the official narrative to the people. Like, you've got a very clear way of doing it. The problem is, if you don't have all of the dots on that timeline, then you're not getting the full picture. So they just pick and choose which dots they want to connect and which ones they want to completely ignore. And it's been this way forever. We just assume that they have good intentions by doing that.
Look, and it's the way it's the way that the populations are treated. And they are not treated even as children. They are treated as brain damaged children. That's how people are treated. And why? So there's 2 clear cases of this. For instance, when you start hearing and people are believing that there was an explosion so big, it managed for the first time in history to melt a core of iron that spread through I don't know how many floors into the bottom of the ground, and it fell on its own, right? But somehow the passport of one of the terrorists that was flying the plane was found untouched on the ceiling of a nearby building. I don't know if you remember this. They found the passport of one of the pilots. There was just a tiny bit scarred of the fire, but was intact. They could read all the information from the passport. And people believed it, right? And some years later, they said, oh, there is this terrible virus that escaped from this installation, right? And you have to take this several times in order to be good. And we have to test you constantly and try to destroy your brain while doing it. Because you both know this for sure. You know that there is this hypothesis that the Egyptians used a kind of a stick that they through the noses of the slaves to destroy a certain part of the brain that, after destroyed, makes you compliant. You lose the will to be defiant or to question things. You just be compliant, right? And what we have these people throwing whatever that was through nose up. Many people were injured. If you remember that there's people that were injured, they say, "Oh, it was the nurse that was a brute or something." No, they were doing what they were told to be doing. Right? You had to stick it right up in there until it touched something. When you're taking an analysis to test it, you just need to smear a little bit on the edge. You don't need to throw it all up in up your nose, right? You don't need it. It's like they saying, "Oh, we need a sample of DNA, so I need to cut you up and take something from the inside to be able to test it," right?
Right.
And in this case of Charlie Kirk, I think it's the same and different at the same time, because people seem to be even more aroused from either a pro or against. Because I didn't saw anyone in the States saying, "Yes, they
Ricardo.
destroyed good, they destroyed the towers, that was good." No, but in this case, I see people disgustingly happy for a death of someone that they just disagree with. Which what are we coming to, right? Where does this make sense? I don't like your opinion, so I destroy it. That's why I made that post saying, if we don't like what's going on the radio station, either the music or the people that are talking, you change the station. You don't go to the building and demolish and kill everyone that is inside it. Right? No one does that, because I didn't like what what music you were playing, or what the speaker was saying. You don't do that. You change the channel, right? And in this case, I see people celebrating that seems so fake to me. Either it's fake, or these people need to be institutionalized because they are not all right in their minds, right? You might disagree with a man for whatever reason, but you don't wish a guy that young with 2 kids to be dead, to be killed. Let's celebrate that. It doesn't make any sense. It shows how deranged society is at this point, or how we accept deranged people amongst our society. Right? The problem is, this is a critical case of freedom of speech. If we stop those people from talking, we are opening a precedent saying, yes, we should moderate how speech, the ability of free speech, which I don't agree. I think people should be able to keep saying whatever they want to say, right? But somehow there is a wish to create a line, because it seems that this is completely out of bounds. It's completely beyond what is acceptable, right? It's like you don't accept that some immigrant comes and starts raping young girls because he thinks he can, right? But do you accept that someone says that he's very happy that someone was shot to death, right? And can we create a line there? Can we somehow create a system that where freedom of speech continues with this flame lit, but moderate what deranged people can say? It's very difficult to
I don't
establish
think we
a
can,
rule.
though, just in the whole liberty or freedom of speech, right? We can't limit people from being repulsive. But what is their reasoning before that, right? Or for their repulsive language, which comes in all forms, all sides. But I think it's important that we check them without legal status, because otherwise you start having, it becomes a very thin line between moral, ethical, legal, and illegal.
Sure, and for this for both of you, and I think Headless will be able to go back many years in time and try to see if there is a root for this. And that I see people rooting for conservatives and Democrats and Republicans and whatever. Does that really matter? Is this system really for the people? Because if we have a group of people ruling a country, I couldn't care less what are their political inclinations, because what matters is what are we doing is for the people. Is this good for the people? It doesn't matter if it comes from a Nazi party or it comes from a Christian party. I couldn't care less as long as it is to benefit the people. There is no political colors. There is just creating a country where we are serving the people, creating conditions for the people of that country. And people get blinded by these ideas that only the Republicans can say what is good, or only the Democrats can say what is good, and so on. It doesn't make any sense to me. Perhaps because I'm outside of this political sphere, but it doesn't make any sense.
You are, but maybe it does make no sense because you are out of it and you're not partisan in this partisan contention, and thus you can see more clearly. If those people who are so partisan that they're dumbed down by their partisanship would become nonpartisan, they would also be able to see things more clearly. I would just, say you're right. The partisanship is blinders. You might as well put blinders on.
True. So if you have these members of parliament, or whatever you call it in the United States, deciding the future of the nation, what laws should be implemented, what rules, and so on, if those rules are serving an ideology, they are not serving the country. They are not serving the people, because they are serving an ideology. And that's not the purpose of a government.
Even worse, they are serving oligarchies rather than individuals.
And wheels of corruption that are very easy to stop, and because of the blackmail that Headless just mentioned at the beginning. So, because they don't accept anyone to hire echelons without putting them into situations that they can control them for the rest of their lives. There has to be some. Go on.
Here's what I'm bringing. So the blues and greens of the Byzantine Empire, I think it's something very interesting and very parallel to what we're experiencing now. They were the dominant two of four dimes in the Byzantine Empire. These are districts, right? So the two were the whites and the reds. Those were the other two teams. Now, they cooperated with the blues and the greens, respectively, beginning the days of Augustus. Chariot racing factions and the color divisions gradually covered other aspects of daily life, such as theater, and by 5th century became more akin to political parties. Between the 5th and 8th century, the dimes grew so powerful that they participated in the political and religious conflicts of the time, terrorized the city with their frequent riots, had their own official militias, and made and unmade emperors, and were sometimes called by the emperors to do tasks like repelling invasions or repairing city walls. Entire neighborhoods and guilds were described as pro-blue or pro-green. Theodore Balisman, and his commentary on the council in Trullo, noted that even the emperor had no authority over the dimes. However, at the beginning of the 7th century, the dimes gradually weakened and became integrated into imperial governing. So the factions were referred to using the Greek blah, 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 which means people. So are you kind of getting what I'm saying here? Like where these political factions and parties start to come through sort of these mutations of sports, right? You get the ideological angle, you get these, kind of professional wrestling angle. But the idea is to keep people just entertained enough by the squabbles between these factions that they're not really engaged in their own lives so much. And one of the things that Theodora and Emperor, what's his name? Give me a second. Justinian, right? Justinian and Theodora would do is he would use the greens as his party, right? And then Theodora would use the blues as her party. And so they would have these street fights between the two of them, thinking they're somehow drawing a division between two people that you never really had any business electing in the first place. Like they weren't elected. They were just appointed. And to give people an outlet for the anguish and the outrage that they were feeling in their own lives, they got to fight each other, right? And it all got started in this arena. So the chariot races were actually much more well paid than our politicians and athletes combined, right? They were getting paid billions of dollars in equivalent money back then. It was insane how popular the chariot races are. So when it comes down to this stuff, politics, entertainment, bullshit, it all goes hand in hand. right? And it all goes back to the theater and how they think of society, right? Theater is the first church. And as long as they give you something to distract yourselves with, they're fine with it. And if you understand that as the very beginning point of civilization is to give people bullshit that they can argue over so that they're not fucking around with our stuff, that's kind of how things progressed from that point forward. Again, like you were saying, as long as it serves the people, but the problem is the interests and the powerful people behind you don't care about serving the people. They just want their agenda done. And that's really the reason why they had governments in the first place, is to get these agendas through. Now, foreign agendas can come in many different packages, but if you think about media manipulation, that's the number one sort of area where foreign actors would want to get control over the countries, because that's always the first assumption, is that the people are programmed by their media. So if you're trying to get more war or less war or war in specific places, you're going to want to control the media apparatus of the country. You can kind of see where it goes from there, but basically what we view as a conspiracy is just the natural outgrowth of not loving your people, not actually having that as one of your priorities at all.
And it's just a continuation of.
We're not receiving you well, Ethan. You have to repeat that. I don't know what's going on with you.
You roboted out.
Yeah.
We got too spicy for the internet.
Yes, it seems so. Ethan, you're frozen. I don't know if you listen or not. So I'll fill in for you. He's still trying. He's still trying.
Coming back.
Oh, sorry. Excuse me for the disconnect. I was going to say it's this rolling ball of divide and conquer that's just plowing through everything in its way, and it can be as big as some poor individual getting assassinated, as we've seen just recently, or it can be as minimal as a game. Right, as you beckon to the teams, how they get everyone fanatic about being a team supporter, and then they're partisan, and then they lose track of he's not human. He supports the other team.
Blues and reds, greens and blues. Is there really a difference between the outcome of what we see in, the Eastern Roman Empire in America? It's very, very similar. And they had the same Byzantine style government where nobody knew what the fuck was going on.
Look, what I don't understand is, if you assume power in a country, and for instance, in Portugal, you need to have majority to control the country. Otherwise, the opposition will block everything that you want to do. Unless they are in cahoot and they agree with one another, they will block any single action of the country, and the country can't have any rules or regulations because they block one another. But if you have majority, I don't know how it works on the United States, but I think
it's very similar sounding.
So is it when you know what's wrong, right? You know what's wrong. What are the society problems? And you are in control, and you have all the means and all the money to solve those problems. Why does it take so long? And most of the time they are not solved. It makes no sense, because if you are in power and you know what the problem is, you just find a way, a group, a team, and solve it. Because there's no limits to what you can do. There's no limits to your money, because obviously every country the world is in debt. I think at this point is 30 trillions or something like that. And my question is, are in debt to who? To who? To who are we in debt? If it is the all countries on earth, right? Who are they in debt to? Right? Because you are making your own money. You're creating money. And you have computers where you can put whatever figure you want in there, because that's how these people operate from a certain point. It's just numbers in the computer, because physical money doesn't exist. I keep saying this. If 15% of Americans, of French, English, Portuguese, whatever, if 50% of the population decide to go to cash machines and to the banks and take all of their money out, I think after the first 6-7%, the banks will start saying, "Oh, I'm sorry, you have to get back next week because we don't have any more money," because it doesn't exist. It doesn't exist. It's numbers in a computer. That's why they forced us to transition to this process of computerized economy and banking system, because the money doesn't exist. It just doesn't exist. So it if you have all the power to change things, why don't you change it, right? Because apparently there are echelons above countries that are deciding how to move them and in what direction and to what cause that they only know, right? So I just read a few days ago that Canada has no gold reserves, zero, nothing, and still they donate I don't know how many hundreds of millions to Ukraine. How can you do that, right? I see in my country, Portugal, they keep saying, "Oh, there something happened in Mozambique or in Angola, so we're going to send 300 million in assistance." And I remember, you're going to send 300 million, but you have a debt of 5 billion to the EU or whatever it is. If you have this debt, how can you send 300 million? How don't you solve the problems in your country? There's people starving. There's people without homes. There's people in need of medical care. And you're still sending money outdoors when you still have lots of problems to solve in here, and money that you don't have. Where's the money coming from? Right? So they have money for one things, but then they don't have money for other things. Right? It's very weird. It shows how rotten, how corrupt, how deranged the whole system of control is. The problem is how to change it. It's very hard because people are attached to this, right? And people are not willing to go back into the wilderness and chase moose and deer to survive and fish, right? Because they are attached to their lives, to their possessions. You cannot demolish just a system and all of these people lose everything that they have or fought for. It's very complicated. It's like Ollivander says in Harry Potter. It's terrible but brilliant. It is brilliant. The system that they built for their own sake is absolutely brilliant. It's magnificent. It's like they have nets for every kind of problem that may emerge. And everyone that we see is replaceable. So they don't care if you enter into a scandal or if you turn out to be down on popular opinion or likes. You just put another actor in there. It's just as easy as that, because then no one knows who you are, right? It's like a theater that they don't like the actor and they say, "Change, put the next one in and the show must go on," right? So I'm sorry, I'm rambling here, but it's
For all
very
the
frustrating.
division, for all the division, there's an amazing continuity of policy from one administration to the next. Isn't that strange? You'd think that that division would sort of filter its way up into the highest echelons of power, but I guess not. Everybody up there pretty much agrees on almost everything. Isn't that weird? Isn't that a little odd?
And the oddest part is that we go along with it. Are we forced to? Are we stupid and don't get it? What is the reason? Maybe all of these reasons. Maybe even those that understand it cannot change it because there's no way to change it. Right? It's like seeing that I don't know how she's called. The girl that went on the girl. Sorry for the disrespect. The woman that went into Joe Rogan's from the Parliament speaking about UFOs. Well, they don't call it UFOs right now, but I don't know. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, they had Anna Paulina Luna, also an actress, very clearly an actress. She was an actress before she joined TPUSA, and then she was an actress working for TPUSA, and then an actress who got into Congress, right? Still an actress, right? She went on the Joe Rogan Experience and talked about these UAPs, and it sounded more like a weapons auction to me than it did an actual concern about these things, because she filled it with a bunch of, BS about these Nephilim and how her Christian beliefs are involved in these UFOs. And it's like, are they really? Can you really point to any place in the Bible where you actually have these UAPs? And they're like, oh no, the phenomenon changes over the years. Well, maybe it's changing now because our consciousness is changing, and that has something not to do with the Bible, but something to do with us. Like, how are we interacting with this stuff? Maybe it's sort of a reciprocal relationship that we have to whatever this phenomenon is. No, we want to sell our weapons platform. So we're going to talk about all these UFOs and UAPs coming out of the military, and we're going to show people this stuff on the news and show them how a missile gets exploded by this stuff. And we're going to talk about how this stuff interacts with U.S. Military equipment, right? That's the main focus, not actually what it is. It's just sort of the military equipment angle. So you can't help but notice these little factions within this whole disclosure movement and say, hey, something else is going on here.
Yeah, look, she asked 3 or 4 guys in that video. Sorry, Ethan. She asked
No,
3 or
you're
4 guys. She asked 3 or 4 guys in that video, have you seen this kind of technology? Do you know of any kind of technology? Right? And I see people commenting on their replies, but I didn't saw anyone commenting on the most important part of one of those guys' reply. And it was the guy that says, yes, but not here. I didn't see anyone commenting on the guy that says, yes, I know a way, but I can't speak of it. No one picked up on it.
They always did that. They always
Why?
do that. They're like, in the skiff later on, we'll do it in the skiff. And you'll see that comment 4, 5, 6 times a day on these disclosure hearings. Yeah, we'll discuss that in the skiff. And it's like, well, what is there being disclosed if nothing can actually come out to the public?
Nothing.
And we know you're lying about everything. So,
but do you know, and Ethan, do you know any kind of mind hive that has lasted for at least 30 years, like the UFO? Because every single year they are hopeful that disclosure is going to come, right? And then every 5 years they say, it's now, and they keep believing on the now when the information is exactly the same that we had 50 years ago. Exactly the same. There is nothing new in these sites. Okay, now there are lights and orbs. Yeah, but we have drones too, and balloons and so on. So there is a few new things, but they are completely irrelevant for the resolution of the case. And these people are believing in this disclosure for 10, 20, 30 years, saying it's today, it's now. Now things are going to move on, right? It's like people believe when they say, oh, he's going to auditor the Smithsonian. And I said right from the beginning, he's not. Because the things that rolls the Smithsonian are way above him. And what did the Smithsonian did? He replied to him saying, we are not going to be auditioned because we don't accept it. Right? Do you suppose that they normally would be able to tell that to the president of their nation? I'm sorry, but you have no jurisdiction here, so we are not going to do anything. And as I look into their budget, last year was 1.4 billion. Go to the other museums that are state-run and so on, and see how much they are receiving. They are dying without money, without the people going there and paying a ticket to enter or give some donation. They will close doors. Right? How many cultural groups need money to develop their ideas and their concepts? And yet the Smithsonian gets 1.4 billion, right? To do what? Yeah, they have a few expeditions, they have a few diggings, they have a few programs running on, but does that justify 1.4 billion? If we see to the other cases how they are running in so little money, they should be doing 100 times more than what they're doing with that kind of money.
Well, it seems their number one job at the Smithsonian is to tell us what not to look into. Like that seems to be their most prominent job, is to go around telling people, you can't talk about the giants, you can't talk about Atlantis, you can't talk about anything because we're going to call you racist if you do. It's like, oh, okay. So that's the big thing you guys are pushing for, is you can't talk about this stuff because we're going to call you names. Seems kind of obvious.
In regards to the Smithsonian and the reasoning for why these elected officials all across the globe can't get anything done, and even why these disclosure formalities are coming out in the way that they come out. It's one observation. Everything is decoration for the military industrial complex in every nation. It's all just kind of cultural color to the bottom line, is that everyone is militarized in so many ways that even actually the United States is if there is such thing as organized disclosure, I understand UK released a bunch of digital, or they freed up a bunch of information. There are other nations where it's happening, but because of the I forget the name of the law, but the law that these individuals are acting on is limiting them because they're working by way of the law, but it's also protecting them to be the whistleblower laws. So they're doing things in a fashion that is permitted by the military. No, let's face it, in the Congress, but they're enabled by that whistleblower law. So hopefully it keeps on happening, but it's all due to the pyramid system of the military, whatever nation it happens to be in. Some are less military and some are less militarized at times, right?
You remind me how funny it is that in order for us to have peace in this planet, we'd have to take down the military complex. And the military complex makes money out of war and strife. So what planet is this that we cannot remove a type of corporation that is clearly inciting to war amongst us to create peace? Right? What power does that institution have? Right? It's the same thing as the Smithsonian, or the same thing of the other aspects that we've been talking about. So who is in charge? Who are the people in charge of this planet? Who are they? And why it's like I just saw this lady speaking, and every time I see a video with the Economical Forum stamp behind it, that blue thing, and she was saying that we should go back to a time where we had only 500,000 people because we are clearly overpopulated. We are far from being overpopulated. Far from
Jane
it.
Goodall. That was Jane Goodall, the gorilla scientist.
Yes,
saying that we need to reduce everybody down to 500,000. It's like, what?
which is to me scandalous, because she was such a sweet lady 20 years ago. She couldn't care less about the world. Just give me my monkeys. Right? And all of a sudden, it seems that for her project to keep running, they said, "Oh, okay, but you have a nice face, and people know you are a good person. So if you want to keep your program running, because there is another woman running that program now. I don't know if you've seen, but the last time I see a presentation about her program, it wasn't her. I even thought she died, and now I see her doing that, right? So somehow they were, either she was like this from the beginning, or someone convinced them, "Oh, I can finance your program. I just needed to do some appearances and give a few speeches that we'll write for you to say. As long as you do it, we'll keep financing your project." For instance, I'm just giving an example, right? And these people are well-intentioned and know that their words won't have an implication immediate, and the public will have its opinion and so on. Okay, I'll do it because I need my project to go on. So I don't know. I really don't know.
Well, I think at a certain point in your career, you can either, go bankrupt, or you can take funding from people you don't necessarily like. And a lot of people choose the latter. But at the same time, you never know, because Jane Goodall did go through the most elite universities and was trained by, these people who basically every other sentence is, "That's why we have to destroy the world population." It's almost a constant refrain from these people because they've run out of ideas. Nobody says we need to destroy world population without absolutely running out of every single idea possible to make things better, because it might hurt the bottom line.
Well, and I think these huge elitists, not to throw that a word around lightly, but these people that are wildly wealthy and so forth and powerful, would put forth the idea that we need to eliminate people. But actually, if we think about it, what is their reasoning for that? It's to get at the real essence of the problem: greed. We need to get rid of greedy people, because actually the world is sustainable enough for even more people than are here today, arguably. Not more greed. We need less greed. In fact, we can't exist by way of the greedy format that we are on. But
Greed is the
plenty-
only thing greed is the only thing sustaining the world economy, because at this point, if they let all of those trillions of dollars they print up for themselves into the market, we're talking about hyperinflation everywhere all at once. And they don't
Well,
want
I
to do
think
that, so they have to keep bailing themselves out with fake
yeah,
money that they printed.
so
The
many,
only thing that's keeping us
complex,
together is
so many complex systems are having their bottom fall out of them right now too. That it's like stagflation or whatever's going to happen. It's going to be interesting anyway.
Look, look at into the woke movement, okay? Into the woke movement that slowly started creeping with some teachers in universities changing kids' minds, slowly progressing in the last 20 years, perhaps 25 years, very slowly, and then speeding up very fast in the last 10 or so years, right? Creating new movements and so on. And what did Hollywood do? Invested its money. Let's for a moment imagine that the money that Hollywood uses is real. They started investing this money to create films that only 2% of the population of each country would like to see on screen, and they killed cinema. The cinemas are deserted. There's very few people going to the cinema these days compared to what they was. They're still losing money, millions and millions for every movie that is made, right? So after 10 years, I ask, where's the money coming from? How is it possible that you still make productions of 300 millions, 500 millions? How is it possible that a series that is to 99% of the people that follow Tolkien obnoxious and the worst thing ever made in television, there is, I think it's called The Rings of Power, I believe, that destroys every single character and transcends them to some anamorphic thing that has nothing to do with the original text. The budget for the first series was higher per episode than Peter Jackson had to make the 3 movies. Okay, just keep this in your mind. The budget for each episode was bigger than the budget to make the 3 movies that Peter Jackson did. Okay, so tell me, how is this possible? Where clearly the people that are there are brain damaged. That they are not normal. That they can't be normal, right? Either that, or they are real evil because they are destroying the dreams and the emotions of these people that are following this man for 40 years or more. It makes no sense. Why do you alienate your viewer? Why did Star Wars alienate everything that George Lucas built? They had something in their hands to make billions easily. There are more than 100 books written, approved by Lucas. Each one of them give a magnificent movie. And what they did, oh, I'm going to throw all of this away because it doesn't matter anymore. And let's create a new universe for Star Wars, one that is inclusive, one that everyone has the Force, when everyone is equal and no one is powerful. And people applauded that. People, when I mean this 2% minority, right? So, like Bill, I don't know his name, Brewer, something Brewer, the comedian. He sent his kids to the university, and when he came home from the first semester, right, he has this in his sketch. He says, "Hi, darling," and the only thing she says is racist, 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 racist. That's racist. Why is good morning? Racist, 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 racist. Say, I paid $40,000 to educate my daughter, and she came home calling racist to everything, right? Learned nothing, but has all these new ideas in their head that everything is wrong on our moral values. They are all changed. Why? This is not why I'm paying an education of a child, right? I'm paying her for learning all aspects of culture and knowledge, not to come home with this fixation of racist, 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 racist. Everything is racist, right?
May
Stop
I
talking
point
about
out?
racism, and racism will go away. Just stop talking about it.
May I point out that those issues are addressed, the both those issues being the child education and the cultural media control and shifting and so on, whatever ways it might be, are actually both thematic or at least explored literarily in 1984. And I was going to bring a little bit of a quote today. To that point, the opening of 1984, the first sentence says, "It was a bright, cold day in April." And it turns out, of course, that the book begins on 4/4, so you know I love it. And he is attending the 2 Minutes of Hate, and this is the government approved media of the time. And there's a scene in 1984 where he's at home and he helps his neighbor, who I believe is a single mother, or the father is working, and the kids are threatening to turn in the main character, Winston Smith, for thought crime, of which he had presented none, but was just trying to help the mother with her clogged drain, I believe. And I'll read the opening line, not from 1984, but from what is known as the book within the book. And this is really potent writing. And in fact, to be ostentatious for a moment, I wrote my first book, The Complete Patriot's Guide to Oligarchical Collectivism, in homage to Orwell's book within the book, The Theory and Practice to Oligarchical Collectivism, in which he proposes that there are three characters, three kind of model types of people. But also in 1984, he explores three character types too, in the book being inner party, outer party, and the proles. And so there's the three in the book, but the three within the book, in the book within the book are as follows. And this really beckons to what we were talking about today in total, with the political assassination and just politics in total, the Byzantine interactions. And Orwell, of course, even says it in the opening remark. Throughout recorded time, and probably since the end of the Neolithic age, there have been three kinds of people in the world: the high, the middle, and the low. They have been subdivided in many ways. They have been born countless different names. There's those colors, excuse my interjection, and their relative numbers, as well as their attitude towards one another, have varied from age to age, but the essential structure of society has never, even after upheavals and seemingly irrevocable changes, the same pattern has always reasserted itself, just as a gyroscope will always return to equilibrium, how far it is pushed one way or the other. So that's it goes on, but
okay,
that there's
and that
three
equilibrium
types.
That equilibrium, isn't it caused by the opinion built into the population?
Well, I suppose I that's one. Yeah, sure, that's definitely one way to term it. I feel like the institutions will do exactly what we allow them, and only that much. But they'll do
Exactly,
all
and
that.
that's why public opinion must be controlled and directed to create that
Sure,
point of equilibrium,
absolutely.
right?
And
Well,
that's why the First Amendment is so important.
there's a kind of tension that's built into every society when it stops being hunter-gatherer, right? So at that point, somebody has to be picked as the leading class, somebody has to be picked as the laboring class, somebody has to be picked as the protector, somebody has to be picked as the trader, right? Those are the basic four elements, I think, of a society: is, who's going to be in charge, who's going to do the manual labor, who's going to be doing this and that. And so what ends up happening is, based off of these qualities, people are gravitating towards certain physical, cultural objects that represent themselves, being part of these different castes, and thinking about themselves in terms of family and land and structure. We think of careers as being something that is easily, transferred through. But back then, it was, your family was your last name, was the thing that you did for generation upon generation upon
It's your
generation.
house. It's your house. You belong to that house.
And I think this does occur, as Orwell said, throughout recorded time, and we will utilize all kinds of judgment systems, race, age, even sex, nationality, heritage, cultural different phenomenon, or as Headless, you remarked on some more archetypal ones. But I think in the age of information, the only fair way to understand someone truly is not what they were born as, but it is what they think as. And so in the Patriot's Guide, I put forth 4 types of people, and by way of how they react or respond to information. And you'll find these being repeated in every situation. Not that it's an absolute necessarily, but it's one way to perceive interactions. There are the idiots, and they will refuse new information. There are the zealots, and they will actively refute new information. And there are the elitists, who use information to benefit themselves and their small circle. And there are the patriots, who reveal information to get at the truth. I think that people often will react in that partisan sense. Usually they're either idiots or zealots, right? They're going to ignore something that's counter to their idea, and or stand on what their idea is in refusal of all else. So just to share like that, I think is a helpful kind of conception or perspective on how people think rather than who they are in other terms.
Well, I think there's an undiscovered or undocumented connection between idiocy and zealotry. So in Mormon circles, you have what's called the Jack Mormon, and they only go on like Christmas and Easter. They're not really too involved in the church. It's just more of a cultural thing. Those are the people who get in arguments online about Mormonism, right? It's not the people who are constantly in the Mormon church. So the people who knew the least about it are the ones who get in the most fights about it, because the people who are actually engaged in the process know what's actually happening, and they don't have time to argue.
I want to know, who are the girls that invite you into their church when you go visit it downtown? That's what I want to know. Sorry, bad joke. Headless, please.
but Headless, explain this to me. So you are ending the hunter-gathering system because you are, let's call it evolve, just for the sake of the argument. You are evolving to a new kind of society, right? We'll still need the hunters, right? And you still need the gatherers, but you're evolving the kind of society. So who are you going to choose to rule each different type of niche that must be regulated in society? Well, logic dictates that you go to the wisest person and with the most experience in that field, no matter if he's a shepherd and doesn't know how to read, or if he's highly educated and specialized on that field. You will choose not for political reasons, not for ideologies, but by wisdom and knowledge on that specific niche of the society. And we lost that completely. We put we put people in positions of control that have no idea about the segment that they are ruling in society. They have to use 20 counselors to tell them what to do, and then they choose because they were placed there to choose that. Right? And for me, that's the base of the whole pyramid that causes to be so imbalanced and so wrong and so fruitful for those on top of it. Right? Because people that are in control have no idea on how to do their function. They don't have the experience, the knowledge, the wisdom. They don't have it. So it makes no sense.
But there are plenty of people that do, right? And so it reflects, at least in modernity, this really poor pattern of humanity, that in this capitalist world of the United States, we will elect people who have a lot rather than know a lot, who
Exactly.
know a lot of people, who rather than know a lot of systems and philosophy or any number of other things that might be useful. We elect people really in an exemplary epitome of the Dunning-Kruger effect, sadly. Right?
You are electing people by what they're telling you they will do, and not by what they know how to do,
or what they've
which is
done.
right.
So here's the thing. I think there's a big crossover between industrialized society and the downfall of tribal society. Because if you think about it, in a tribal society, people have to prove themselves to get into positions of authority. It's like that guy knows his shit. He gets to be head man of that, and that, right? So we're giving him that. It's more of a meritocratic, bottom up sort of choice, right? Because you could see he's actually doing the job that makes him a good leader. Pretty simple. Well, when you've got top down leadership organization structures, that's usually from a foreign source, right? So you're saying, I want this guy in charge over here, and not, that representational bottom up sort of perspective. And you see the end of tribal society really start with the institutionalization of Christianity. You could see all these different colors and heraldry that came through family lines that had these different jobs and lineages and tribal structure for thousands of years before that. But then it all came under the cross, and then you lose that tribal society because now everybody goes to the church. That's where the head man is, right? He gets chosen by the Vatican. Once you've got that top-down corporate structure, the tribalism starts to evaporate. And, without that tribalism, you don't really have meritocracy. You've got whoever the top man chooses to be leader in your area.
Well,
when you have a lot of sense.
When you have an education system that, for instance, let's imagine whatever subject you want to think about that is given in a school or in a college, you are given a very narrow segment of knowledge about what is considered to be by someone the correct way of thinking or doing. You're not given the broad spectrum for you to choose or debate. You are given a specific road that they figured it out. This is the road that we think it's correct. Who the hell are you? And why is that correct? Because if I'm educating someone, I want to give it the broader view of everything and allow that person to then decide by himself, right, what road to choose, right? And that would be the normal process. But in every segment of our civilization, everything appears to us in predetermined roads. If you want to follow the system and grow into that system, you have to follow the roads that they choose for you. You have 6 or 7 roads you can pick, but all of them are under the same rule. That is, this road has no sideways. You have to follow like this. That's why we see history in the state that it is. We see politics in the state that it is. We see education in the state that it is. We see healthcare in the state that it is, because the roads that they are picking has nothing to do with the research or what we know about those things. It's just what they chose us to believe, right? So I don't know how different it is from choosing fighters in a Rome Colosseum, or choosing a football team by their name, or because my father liked that team and I follow that team. It's just a mental process that has nothing to do with choice. It's just following. And all of this is created on a base of the following and not thinking about it, right? And you keep justifying to yourself why you follow that road, and it was your choice when it wasn't. It was a segment of cultural identity that was implemented since you were a kid, and you don't even see the flaws. It's like you're inside the cave of Plato. You don't see what's really going on. And if someone appears and says, hey, look, those are just shadows, the people, the real people are behind you, and say, oh, go away, you insane little creature. We all are here. We all know what we're seeing. right? You're just one crazy motherfucker. We know what's going on, right? And so this happens in all segments of society. No one has originality. It's that. No one has self-thought. It's erased, right? And that's why you have all these masses believing in things that once you just step a meter to the side, you see, what the hell was I believing in on? It makes absolutely no sense whatsoever, right? So, but it works. That's why it's brilliant, because people are obsessed with these roads, with these segments of life that they're following as their
Think
own,
about
which they
this.
aren't.
Whenever you criticize the government in a strong and impactful way, the first thing people do is respond with, well, who's going to build the roads? Well, what's interesting is in Washington, D.C., you look around and they built the roads into these really occult shapes and patterns around their buildings in sort of a ritual. So when they're saying who will build the roads, and you look at the federal government that's doing magical spells in roads in their home turf, you got to really wonder, is there a spiritual element to this roads idea? Like, have they connected to these roads as if that's part of their individual personality? And I think in a lot of ways, they are asphaltosexuals. When you make those criticisms of the style of government and they go to the roads, I think it's because they actually have a sexual relationship with how these roads are operating. I mean,
Look,
are there worse things than not having roads where the government can send troops into your city?
it is so hard to understand that, considering these are highly ritualized elites with very profound metaphysical ideas in terms of control. And I'm not talking about the faces we see. I'm talking about the high echelons that we don't see, that they build a city. And you can see on all European cities and all main cities, you can see these sigils geo-imprinted into the earth. Well, people that are living in them don't even realize it. They are inside a highly ritualized center of energy that is controlling them in one way or another, right? And it's like being inside the simulation and not understanding that you are inside the simulation. You just need to extrapolate that to higher levels, and because it's like we are all blinded, because the facts are there, right? And now we have satellite, we have Google Earth, we have all of this, and we don't see that we're looking at sigils. Why are those sigils different from a sigil doing in a ceremony, right? When you have that central building and around it, you see all these geometric patterns that are made intentionally. Of course, it wasn't an accident. Oh, it just happened because we're doing it so perfectly on each sector. And when we looked at it, oh, look at it. It looks like a magical symbol. So strange.
Nazca
No,
lines. Nazca lines. It's all the same shit. They're trying the same spells, and we just don't know the nature of those spells because it's been forgotten.
And
We got it taken out of
we,
our
men-
minds or something.
we mentioned 9/11 earlier, and of course there's the 11 on the date. And if you look at the Twin Towers, they are in fact, or were in fact, N11, and were even associated with Channel 11 in New York City. And do you guys know how many stories the Twin Towers were?
No, I don't.
111?
110, I think. 110. But maybe it might have been 111, but yeah,
I
exactly.
know
about
one
the
of them was
basement?
taller than the other.
There may be slight differences, but 110 was the 11 in it. And if you look, so with the signs and symbols, you guys mentioned earlier, as soon as you look at the facts of 9/11, it becomes suspicious and there are more questions. And if you just look at the symbol, there are more questions. In fact, look at what happened on that date throughout recorded time, and you'll find all sorts of astonishing major events. And in fact, there were Satyagraha was one of Mahatma Gandhi's ideas of worldwide peace, and it was celebrated on September 11th. So there, like you talk about the metaphysical, symbolic interaction that they try to hit on, like, wow, 9/11 was a wild one.
Look, if
You
the
boys
first-
want to watch a video?
Sure. Well, you put it on. The first video that I went to look is a film from the 80s about about how the towers were built, right? And the first thing you understand about those towers is that they were very clever to create the main structure of those towers is around the elevator shafts. The major beams of those towers, what supports the whole building is around the elevator shafts at the core of the building, which means, and they say it in the video, that it could suffer a major impact or being destroyed all around and the building will
It was
still
built for
stand
that.
because the
Well,
structure.
hold on, guys. Hold on, guys. This is entirely relevant, and you have absolutely no idea. So,
And
you
not
guys
only
need to
that, but if
get your
the
towers
steel
ready.
was rated 20,000 psi durability back in the 70s, it was probably 25,000 or more, because that
Right.
that steel was like on an industrial capacity of US peak rather than US dilution that
Ready?
we might see.
Go
Excuse me,
on.
Headless.
Tell me if you can hear it.
One whale of the main event right here after this commercial message.
What?
Twin Towers, take it, Mean Gene.
This will be at this time, the Slickster, a key of the African dream and a big boss man. Gentlemen, is this the match you wanted all along, or are you going to continue your terrorist attacks on the mega powers and the defenseless Elizabeth?
Well, there was the terrorist attack in 91.
Yeah, we are
There's
anxiously
more.
awaiting the presents, and they're just about on their way now. The Twin Towers, and our team, along with the Big Boss Man.
And they are indeed towers, McMahon. Look at the size of these two.
Huge.
All right, thank you, Vince
The
McMahon.
governor.
Macho Man Randy Savage, the lovely Elizabeth. Three people working as one with one goal in mind: to defeat, or should I say demolish, the Twin Towers. Hulk Hogan, you talked about the Triangle of Love.
All cooked
Jesse
up.
Ventura says there's a problem. Explain.
Well, you know, Mean Gene, you get right to the heart of the matter with that question, brother. It's the love, man, that's going to supercharge the mega powers and tear down the Twin Towers.
This man, what were your thoughts then?
Oh, yeah, Mean Gene, I can still feel the pain when that cold steel bit into Miss Elizabeth's wrist right there. And when her muscles were torn, my muscles were torn. When her bone was bruised right there, I felt the pain. Hulk Hogan felt the pain, and I can still feel the pain right now. And Hulk Hogan, that pain won't stop until the Twin Towers come crumbling down. Oh, yeah, right now, tonight, on prime time, yeah.
Oh, baby. So, what do you guys think?
I
Inside
think-
job or not?
I'm not trying to offend anyone, okay? I'm not trying to offend anyone. But what kind of people look at this overacting, right? That has nothing to do with reality and enjoy it because it's completely over the top, These characters that we are seeing in screen.
What do you think the message is about 9/11? It's completely over the top. Who could believe this? It's the same as professional wrestling.
This is no different from that guy on television saying, look, you can get the shot and then get this tasty burger and look at these potatoes, right? He's talking to mentally injured people. He's not talking to normal function humans.
Absolutely.
And people don't see it. And I don't understand how. How is it possible that you
Well,
don't
we
see it?
we can also remember too that the Coup, a dope rap group from Oakland with a female MC, they're neat. They got some cool stuff. Very anti-establishment stuff. They came out with a record just before the Twin Towers fell that had them pressing like a classic cartoon bomb device and blowing up the Twin Towers, and they had to get rid of that cover. And so whether it was in the psyche, the collective unconscious, or because of what happened in 1991 or 1991,
That clip was from 1989. That clip was from
Jesus.
1989.
Jesus.
Sure. Okay. Yeah. I'm just saying. Well, and in New York, for instance, like it is the center of the world before media changed as far as internet goes. So like everyone associated with New York and the Twin Towers. I'm not saying that there wasn't something else going on. I'm just saying it was an influential city when in a time when there weren't many more media influences besides LA, right? Now everywhere there's a media influencer, right? So like New York fell off, LA, it don't matter. As we regarded before, Hollywood, whatever. I listened to this guy, he's got 3 million followers and he's way better than Dan Rather or whatever.
What if this is a form of devotion? What if this is a form of religion? I mean, these people might be practicing a type of ancient religion by putting it in front of your faces like this and then showing you everything start to finish, how they built the building. Everything was modeled around these weird numbers that they kept using over and over again. What if the whole thing was part of human sacrifice?
I think too, it beckons to a deep past influence on us with the biblical stories of Yahweh and Asherah, which were represented by twin pillars, and this whole Yakin and Boaz twin pillar concept, and the twin protectors of the doorway, whether they were lions or any number of things. So I think there's a powerful psychic hit, even if you're as educated and as coked up as Hulk Hogan, you'll still have that kind of like, I know this is powerful.
He's on a script. He doesn't know.
He's on a script. No, good point. No. Oh, you're right. You're right. That was not him. Certainly.
Right, but they all were. So how do we know what's real and what's fake, or what's being injected into our society? It's all sort of a black box, We don't know what goes on behind these scenes, and it's crazy how much we don't know.
Yeah. Definitely 9/11. I would bet that it was a multinational intelligence operation long in the works. So it's hard to say who knew what and was gaslighting this and that and tapping into a big psychic event or the big psychic symbolism as I referenced. But yeah, I think it's becomes hard to suggest that it wasn't known by some very powerful people, right?
Now think about that disclosure method as an art style, right? It's an art motif. So what you're doing is you're telling people to their faces something that's going to be happening in the future that they don't know yet. So there's no way for them to put these pieces together until long after the event. And doing that increases the type of power that you get from that. There's only one place in the world where I've seen that art style used over and over again. Carthage. They use that same kind of disclosure method in how they depict their human sacrifice rituals. And they use the numbers and they use all this other stuff associated with the magical ritual right there in Carthage. And nobody's even looking into this stuff. Why would they look into it? Who's connecting conspiracy theories with ancient civilizations that supposedly went extinct?
It reminds me of the quote attributed to Confucius: signs and symbols rule the world, not words and laws.
Right? But it's deceptively simple motifs like that really start to make you wonder, because deceptively simple is something you could show to everybody. And it's not until you get really close to it that it's like, holy shit, what am I looking at? And what's going on right now in Gaza?
Most of these people. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Most of these people, even when shown the truth, and I'm talking about probably more than 70% of the population, will choose not to believe it, because there are facts that cannot be denied. There is, first of all, you cannot put a plane crashing into the ground and and completely pulverize it. It doesn't exist, because the engines alone weigh several tons and will remain relatively intact because there's parts that are completely massive, right? And there's 70% plus of the population in the world believing that the plane crash near that area, the one that supposedly crashed outside of the city. Okay. And there's just a hole in the ground. There is still there today. The hole in the ground is still there. And everything vaporized. Everything was burned. How can people believe in such a thing? It's not possible, just not possible for it to happen. The impact would have to be like meteorite-like power in order to manage to volterize everything. It is not some machine hitting the ground at 600 kilometers an hour. It doesn't
Well,
happen.
same thing with the engines that supposedly crashed into the Pentagon, right?
Well, the Pentagon is easier because they refuse to show the image of the gas station or whatever you call it there in the States. They kept it on the first 5 or 6 years. They kept it secret, and when it finally came out, we see that there is no plane. It's just a missile hitting the Pentagon. There is no plane. And the funny thing is, the last reports that I received from the 9/11 event is that all the people that were interviewed, well, this was known at the time, but I'm now speaking about the planes. All the people that are interviewed and said they saw planes hitting the towers, they connected them all to government positions, all of them. And then they start saying, well, after all, the planes don't exist. There is not one single independent footage showing planes hitting the towers. So we are left to think, and this I don't know. There is a lot of things wrong with this, and this is the part that I don't know if in the case of the towers, there were actually planes hitting the towers. But there is now this very good chance that there was never any planes at all. That what we saw was just a montage made worldwide for everyone to see, where a lot, even the reporters that were showing it didn't know, because obviously you're going to believe when you see all that destruction and you call into action in that second to go live and show footage. You're not concerned if the footage is real. You just show it and believe it. So their emotions is real. The reporters were reporting the horror that they were seeing, right? So it's easy to create this deceit because it's something that it happens from 1 second to the other, and you are forced to react with the evidence that you have. But in time, when you start analyzing all things, and I question you, how about the unequivocal evidence of people that receive a phone call or a message saying, don't go to work tomorrow? Don't go into that plane. These people receive these messages. These people receive these emails. These people receive these phone calls. So were this the terrorists saying to this regular person that works in the building not appear at work at that day? Doesn't it weird? Someone calls you and say, don't go to work tomorrow. So in this alone, we can see that this is not a terrorist action. Because if it was, it wouldn't be known by anyone that could give you that information. It has to be consensual. It has to be consensual. It has to be under the knowledge of someone that then spread the message to those that they knew, right?
A terrorist act is violence for political ends, right? So in that case, it was a terrorist event, and it was maybe the biggest crime in history in the last many years. But it's not what we consider terrorists when we think of them. But
did people forget what was considered the worst film in history until that point? That was Rambo 3. Did people forget what the movie is about? It's about Americans training the Al Qaeda. It's Americans on Afghanistan training these people to fight against the Russians, giving them weapons, training, all the things that they are using or were using until a few years ago. Now they have another supply of material to do this acts of terror. They were trained by military forces that were American.
And it's not too well known, but when the United States forces first went into Afghanistan to get bin Laden, when that first went down, they had him. They had him up in the mountains before he entered into Pakistan, and they were called down. They had him so close that they were sent in winter gear to get him.
Because that's not the double. They really went to the real one. They got mistaken. It's not the dupe.
Who knows? But I was going to say, or reasoning behind that is to prolong war. If they get bin Laden, there's no reason for multi-decade war. So they had it. They had him.
how about the fact that one of the first jobs that Bush Jr. had was as the CEO of a Bin Laden oil company in the United States? How about the fact that the only planes that were allowed to lift up after the Twin Towers were the Bin Laden planes with all their possessions and all their families and all their servants? Those are the planes that lift up and went away, right? Okay, they are separating the insane son from the wealthy family that has worked in the United States for so long. But most people never knew that Bin Laden was present in the United States as a family for so long years, helping the Bush family economically, financing him, giving work to his incompetent son, right, that managed to bankrupt an oil company that is extracting oil from the ground. He managed to bankrupt that, right? There's only a few people. There's no expenses. It's just profit because you're taking it from with machineries pumping oil from the ground, and he's still bankrupted, right? And then he appears as a president, and there is all these connections with this family, and no one discusses it when it was fairly known. It doesn't need much to dig in to see that who owned those businesses, who were the families behind it. This is not discussed. Why, right? So it's again the road to follow. There's the road for you to follow. This is the truth we want you to believe, right? It's like the coincidence of Building 7 that just received a few weeks prior this archives. I don't remember if from the CIA or the FBI, with documents that they wanted to be removed from the archives. They brought it all to a certain floor on Building 7, and they take the opportunity to demolish Building 7 that had nothing to do with the towers, and it also crumbled straight into the ground as a programmed demolition. And you have the owner of the building, in the first time he appears on television, saying, oh yes, we decided to demolish it, so we planted the explosives right at the last minute because we thought that the building would be at risk. And the second time he's interviewed, he denied everything he said before. Oh, no, I didn't say anything like that. I don't know any of planted explosives. When he clearly said it before, right? So it's the problem is it's too easy to manipulate public opinion one way or the other. It's just too easy because people don't want to, they don't have the time to go and research and look into these matters. They want to believe that what the system gives them is the truth, is what's really happening, right? And so it's like a cult, exactly as you said, Atlas. Everything was turned into a cult. Everything was turned into a religion, into a fanatism sect, where each one chooses what to believe and what to follow. And I think that's the main problem why we have society as it is, because we just accept these roads and follow them and believe them there are all our own values and our own morality, when in fact there aren't, because they weren't thought of. They were just accepted. And I'm sorry for the rambling once again.
Well, I think this has been a good episode. I think we got a lot of topics in there. Thank you guys for joining me, and thank you for joining us in the audience. Lots of great comments. Thank you for coming by. So this has been the Headless Giant. Ethan Indigo, Ricardo Calvario, signing off. Thank you.
Thank you.